Hello everyone, and welcome back to the SBRE. We're going to do a recap of the 2020 drama thriller, The Devil All the Time. In today's video, we're going to follow several concurrent stories where faith and evil both bring out the worst in people, and a guy goes out of his way to punish sinister characters. Make sure to watch the video till the end so you don't miss out on anything. Now just sit back, relax, and enjoy. The film begins with a narrator introducing two towns, Knockemstiff in Ohio and Coal Creek in West Virginia, on a map of the United States. The two towns are vital to the story of the film, and the people are connected by dumb luck or God's intentions, or both. The next scene introduces us to Willard in 1957. Willard is the father of a young boy, Arvin Eugene, who is on the driveway playing with his dog called Jack. They live in Knockemstiff, in a rented house where Willard has erected a cross behind the house, where he would pray every morning and every evening. One day, he calls Arvin to the back to pray with him and forces the boy to be honest with God about the happenings of the day. While praying, the scene changes to a time 12 years earlier when Willard was a soldier. There, Willard was with his fellow soldiers when they came across the body of Gunnery Sergeant Miller Jones. Sergeant was hanged on a cross. He was brutally tortured, but not dead yet. The Japanese left him on a cross suffering, and the image has never left the mind of Willard to this day. Willard is forced to shoot him in the head and put him out of his misery. Next, young Willard is shown returning from the war in a bus. He stops at a town called Meade in Ohio for a drink in a cafe. In the cafe, we're introduced to Carl and Sandy, who will be important later in the movie as they turn into serial killers. Carl and Sandy would form a duo that would later be called the shooter and the bait respectively. Also in the cafe, Willard meets a waitress who fascinates him with her smile and kindness. She gives food to a drunk homeless man who is not welcomed in the cafe. Afterwards, they chat for a while, and they both seem to really like each other. Next, Willard is picked up by his uncle Earskell, who lives with Willard and his wife in Coal Creek. While driving, Willard gives him a bottle of brandy, which his uncle likes very much. Further down the road, Willard surprises him with a gun as a gift and says it was used by Hitler to shoot himself. Both of them laugh at this, showing their good relationship with each other. Once they reach home, Willard is greeted and hugged by a woman who is obviously happy to see him back from the war. Willard stinks of liquor, but explains that he was celebrating love with a girl in Meade. The woman is his mother, Emma. She's a religious woman and insists Willard on joining her to church on the coming Sunday. Then in the church, they are introduced to a young girl, Helen Harton. Emma had promised God that if he brought Willard back home from the war, she'll marry him to Helen. Emma insists Helen to sit next to Willard so they can introduce themselves. But as the service progresses, Helen is seen to be attracted to the pastor of that day called Roy Lafferty. In any case, Willard doesn't seem attracted to Helen at all. Roy preaches together with his cousin Theodore, who's in a wheelchair. The sermon is filled with passion, and Roy even pours a jar of spiders on himself to demonstrate his faith. Helen catches his eyes and wants to be close to a man of God. Then Emma and Willard drive home with Emma still insisting that he should have done more to catch Helen's attention. Willard goes back to Meade where he had met the girl in the cafe. There he finds the woman, Charlotte, and immediately forms an irresistible chemistry with her. Then before we know it, they're married and have a little boy called Arvin. They're looking over a house, which brings us back to the place that they're renting in Knockemstiff. Willard goes to the back of the house in a secluded forest area and for the first time in years feels close to God. This is where he chooses to build his cross. Both Willard and Charlotte decide that the house is great and they could even buy it one day if they continue saving. Willard writes to his mom in Coals Creek and tells her that they've found a house and that they're happy in Knockemstiff. Then he's seen working hard in a butcher's mill. The letter is being read to his mother and Uncle Earskell by Helen in Coals Creek, who's also had a baby with Roy the preacher. The baby's called Lenora, and Helen has brought her to Emma's place so she can watch her while she goes out with her husband Roy. This is the last time Helen would see Lenora again. Helen's body would be found 7 years later buried in the woods. Helen soon leaves with Roy and his cousin Theodore in the car. Then the scene returns to 1957, where Arvin, now 9 years old, is playing with his dog as his father arrives. Here, Willard sees that Arvin had a black eye from a fight in school. This was because everyone in Knockemstiff was related in one way or another, except Arvin, whose parents had moved there when he was a young boy. While walking towards the prayer site, his father tells him that when that happens again, he's supposed to fight back and finish that business. While praying, two poachers pass by and insult them, and even say that they'll go to their house and rape Charlotte. They ignore them and continue with their prayer. Later, they head back and find out that she's fine, but his father goes out to town to get some utilities for the house. He's accompanied by Arvin and his dog Jack. Instead of going to the store, Willard drives to where the poachers stayed. He beats them both and tells Arvin that's how he should do the same to any boy that mistreats him. In the future, Arvin would consider that the best day he ever spent with his father. On reaching home, they find Charlotte passed out in the kitchen. Later, they're told by a doctor that she has cancer and it cannot be treated. They have very little time left before she dies. Willard takes Arvin to the cross where they pray vehemently for God to save Charlotte. After realizing that she's not getting better, Willard decides to make a sacrifice to God. The sacrifice would be Jack, Arvin's dog. After shooting the dog, he hangs him on the cross as Sergeant Miller had been hanged back in the war. However, Charlotte never recovers, and soon after, they're seen at her gravesite at her funeral. Arvin is mad at his father for killing his dog because it didn't even save his mother. Willard is also heartbroken by his wife's demise and chooses to send Arvin to his uncle's place in Coles Creek for a while. Next, exactly on the day of burying his mother, we're shown Arvin finding his father at the cross dead. Willard had committed suicide, leaving the young boy an orphan. Next, we're introduced to Lee, Sandy's brother, a police officer with the dreams of getting elected in the town of Knockemstiff. Lee has bad behaviors that he would like to keep hidden from the public, like getting busy with a girl in his police car. He's called to investigate the suicide of Willard that night. He finds Arvin with a friendly neighbor who informs him of the dreadful situation. From there, we see that 7 years ago, the day Helen was reading the letter Willard sent to his mother and uncle, she had left Lenora with them and entered in a car with Roy and the cousin Theodore. Before that, Roy had been bitten by a spider in the neck, making him lock himself up in a dark closet for 2 weeks. Roy had done this to pray to God that he should be given a much bigger task in the world. By the time the swelling was down, he was convinced that God had talked to him. After leaving Lenora with Uncle Erskine and Emma, the trio drive into the woods where Roy stabs Helen in the neck with a screwdriver, and she dies. After unsuccessfully trying to resurrect her, Roy buries her body and both him and Theodore make a run for it, driving towards the south. Roy is devastated and leaves his crippled cousin in the car sleeping. Next, Roy is hitchhiking in the car of Sandy and Carl, the couple from Mead who met in the same restaurant as Willard and Charlotte. Roy dozes off and is woken up in the forest. Carl wants to show him something. Carl wants Roy to make love to Sandy as he takes pictures of them beside a lake. Roy is surprised by that situation and refuses to go ahead with it. This is even after being shown a gun by Carl. He chooses to be shot instead of going ahead with it. He is shot twice, dying immediately. Roy is among the first of their victims, or rather, models, as they called their victims. Then we're taken back to 1957. The young boy called Arvin is delivered to Uncle Erskine and Emma as his guardians in Coal Creek. There he meets Lenora, who had grown from the time she was left by her mother Helen. They become brother and sister. Next, it's 1965, where the new family is celebrating Arvin's 18th birthday. Both children have now grown considerably. All of them are seated at the table where Arvin blows out a candle after making a wish. Uncle Erskine gives him the gift Willard had given him when he first arrived from the war, a German Luger pistol. Just like in Knockemstiff, the boys at school mistreat and bully Lenora because of her innocence. Arvin, loving her like her own sister, would fight them off whenever he could. He protected her. Every day after school, he took her to her mother's grave where she would pray. After his childhood, he didn't particularly care too much for praying, but being a fighter was instilled in him too. Lenora had a soft heart, even willing to forgive her father if he ever came home, and start over with him. In the next scene, a new pastor is coming to town, and each of the village folk are asked to cook something special for the retiring old pastor. Arvin's grandmother Emma can only afford chicken liver, which is cheap but well talked about by the people in the town. Some said she was the best cook in town. On Sunday during church, each household brought expensive foods except for Emma. But as the Reverend talked about each food, he was adamant in remaining with the chicken liver that she'd cooked. Not because they were sweet, but proved how poor she was. She was mortified and embarrassed by his comments. On the other hand, Arvin picks up Lenora from school and drops her off at her mother's grave. Once it starts raining, Lenora runs to the church to take cover, where the new preacher was watching her from the window. She informs him of her torments in school, and he takes this opportunity to take her on a drive, somewhere no one can disturb them while they pray on it. At the same time, Alvin stakes out the bullies at school and decides to take them out one by one. His timing is impeccable, and he beats the hell out of each of them, almost killing them. This is how his father Willard had taught him. Timing is everything. As Arvin is taking revenge for what the schoolboys had put his sister through, the preacher is working out some evil ways with her in a secluded area in the forest, using the name of the Lord to make her remove her clothes. He starts kissing her and touching her in ways that only lovers do. Later, Lenora tells Arvin that she will be coming to visit her mother alone. With the same trust her mother had on a preacher, she agrees to his lies and deceit. Next, we are shown that Sandy has been having doubts about what Carl had been doing with their models and wants to leave him. It's 1965. Carl also notices the obvious problems in the relationship. Later, Sandy is looking at pictures of her victims as her brother Lee, the cop, comes to visit her. She drops one of the pictures without noticing, and Lee is able to confiscate it. Lee has come around to ask her to keep her head low, as the police have been on her trail. This is because she hangs out with Carl and Lee wants to run for election. Later, Lee finds out that the picture he took and the victim disappeared. He wonders just what his sister is up to. Next, we are introduced to Leroy, a pimp that pays Lee to keep his business running. Leroy is a gangster and he pays Lee to keep the cops away. This is a problem to Lee's election aspirations in Meade. He goes to visit Leroy, who assures him that no one would know of their dealings. However, Leroy warns him that if Lee ever disturbs him again, he and his errand boy Bobo would put a bullet inside his head. The next scene shows Carl and Sandy picking up a hitchhiker called Private Gary Matthew. Gary would soon be their next victim in their series of murders. Gary is invited to lunch by the couple and he thinks they're just a nice couple. Shortly after, they offer him a drink and start taking pictures. Soon, after murdering poor Gary Matthew, Carl is singing along to a gospel song playing on the radio like a twisted monster. Sandy tells him that she does not like what they do anymore. Later, she reports to the receiving officer, knowing full well that Gary will not be making it since he's already dead, chopped up and buried in a suitcase. Later in Coal Creek, Lenora tells the preacher that she's pregnant. He refuses this and says that she's sick and sinful. He asks how he could be the father while all they did was pray. On Sunday, Arvin visits Lenora at her bedside as she has morning sickness. She knows he cares about her and tells him that she loves him. While in church, the preacher's sermon is based on Lenora's condition as he speaks. He rebukes her pregnancy as a delusion of sin. The scene changes with him telling her to get rid of it as she will bring shame to her poor family. With this, Lenora is lost in the preacher's words and she decides to commit suicide by hanging herself while the others are in church. As she sets the noose around her neck, she changes her mind as she knows Emma and Uncle Erskine would still forgive her no matter what. But it's a decision too late. She slips on the bucket below her legs and hangs in her shed. Later, Arvin finds her dead. The scene is followed by her burial, and Aunt Emma wonders what problem she might have had. Later, Arvin is informed by a police officer that she was pregnant. In disbelief, Arvin is able to connect one and one together as the preacher did not even attend her funeral. Then, the preacher takes advantage of another girl in a town in the same manner he did Lenora, taking her out into the woods and in his house late at night. Arvin was watching him do all of this in the meanwhile and knew that he was the person who impregnated Lenora, pushing her to her death. He decides to take revenge. He goes to the church with his father's gun and confronts the preacher. He confesses that he had done lustful things to a young girl in high school. Later in their talk, the preacher realizes he's talking about her and tries to fight him off, but Arvin is fast with the gun. He shoots him 3 times, collects the bullet casings, and runs off from Coles Creek, having killed the preacher. He decides to go back to Knockemstiff to set things right with his father. On his way, Arvin's car breaks down, and so it looks like he'll need to hitchhike. In the next scene, Lee the police officer visits Leroy and Bobo in their house. Bobo the muscle man is in the kitchen and Lee shoots him in the head with a hidden gun. Leroy is in the bathroom coming from the shower and he stands no chance either. They both die. Next, Sandy and Carl are on their way home from killing Gary. Sandy tries to talk Carl out of picking Arvin up since he's going towards their home. Carl finds the opportunity irresistible. They pick up Arvin not knowing that he has a gun too. They chat for a while and Carl eventually says he has to pee, a trick that they've used for a while now. Arvin, being keen and alert all the time, notices that Carl has a gun on his belt as he gets out of the car. Arvin decides to hold his own gun closer as the trust he had with these people fades away. As Carl comes from the trunk with his gun held out, Arvin empties 2 shots in his grim body, quick as lightning. Carl falls to the ground, bleeding out. In shock, Sandy pulls out her handgun from her bag, and for a moment they pause, pointing guns at each other. She pulls the trigger first, but it's empty. Carl had emptied her barrel thinking she might try to kill him one day. Arvin's shot is sure and fast. The bullet goes through her neck to the windshield. Arvin flees the scene, leaving the 2 serial killers dead. Then Sheriff Lee is called to the crime scene and is shocked to find his sister dead. He rushes to her house and tries to cover her for her crimes in order to secure his re-election. In the house, he finds countless pictures of their victims, mutilated and murdered. Lee collects these pictures and burns them all. Meanwhile, Arvin arrives at Knockemstiff to find his friendly neighbor who had helped him when both his mother and father had died. He informs him that the house they lived in was burned down a few years earlier. But for Arvin, the house didn't matter. He was back to give Jack his dog a good burial after it had been left on the cross years ago. Lee was informed of Arvin by a police officer in Coal Creek who identified the gun used to kill his sister and husband. He immediately remembered the night he picked up Arvin after Willard committed suicide and knew that the dog was the reason why he was back in town. Lee went to pursue Arvin alone with surety that he would find him at the cross. Carrying a gun, Lee wanted to close off all loose ends connecting him to his sister. Arvin didn't want to fight with Lee, but he also couldn't reason with him. Holding his father's German Luger close to his chest, Lee drew, but wasn't fast enough as Arvin was quicker. He put a bullet in Lee's gut, eventually killing him. Afterwards, Arvin buried the remains of Jack, together with the gun belonging to his father. He hitchhiked in a car and dreamt of several things, a family, Vietnam, and more. For now, he slept as the car was moving, and he was glad to be away from Knockemstiff. That was it for today, guys. We hope you enjoyed the video. What are your thoughts about this movie? Would you watch it? Have a movie you want us to recap? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.